discussed in rhymes, and that's basically like our two events coming together. And so this first one is very much just like a tester to see what works, what doesn't work, what kind of stuff you want to put in, what kind of stuff you want to keep out. But yeah, it's kind of just slapdash, few people here. So let's just use it as a tester, and then the one that we'll have next month will be like our big launch. But sweet. So let's show the people how it runs, John. Let's go.
Yes, Blake. Mr. Blake.
Hello everybody. We're all having a good time, are we? Yeah. Hello. So yeah, like I said, I run an event called Poetic Justice, and it's basically like a platform and a collective for really good wordsmiths, whether it's hip hop or spoken word or whatever. But yeah, I'm gonna start talking and start rhyming. And the first one I do is a short one. I'm trying to learn the words. This is my latest one I did. The track's called Guidance, but I only know the first verse off by heart, so I'm going to do that because it's still quite good for us. A lot packed into a little space of time. Right. It's time to stand up to the tyrants. We're stronger than them. No longer will we suffer in silence. Less suppressed information, more direct action and mass non-compliance. Did you know that we stand on the shoulders of giants? Buckminster Fullers, Nikola Teslas, Rudolf Steiners. Have you read the terms and conditions on that overused appliance that allows the CIA to spy on us? Self-defense now defines our defiance, and the downtrodden's now got to form an alliance. As well, there's still pharmaceutical and fossil fuel reliance. We're being held back by governments, multinationals, big banks, think tanks, lobbyists, technology, academia, the media and science. No matter how many clients consume the products they produce, they will never mutually annihilate us with their trident. That thought that frightens the life out of some reading 9-to-5ers, and they might try, but they will not conquer as they divide us. What lies in front of us, and what lies behind us, is nothing compared to what lies inside us. The universe will provide us, and then nature will remind us something about giving us guidance. Yeah. Oh, I forgot the last bit. Thank you. Yeah, I don't know that one very well. That's why I wanted to do that first. Shall I say a bit more, or do you want me to stress it? I was going to do a couple, but I mean, that's separate pieces, isn't it? Oh yeah, this one's a positive one, right? It's, basically, my friend asked me to write one about getting over mental health issues, so I thought, right, well, I haven't got over my mental health issues, but it's alright. And yes, this is basically about overcoming mental health issues and then trying to create a feel-good feeling that continues after. I was on a lot of acid when I wrote this, right? It can happen to the best of us. Too many are depressed. When you get knocked down, get back up and dust yourself off, it's for the best. It's easy to get stressed, buttons get pressed, issues get addressed. But if you haven't confessed by now what's really getting you down, you need to let it off your chest. And always look on the bright side of life's test. Instead of fixating on the past or the future, to the point where some of us become obsessed. That's not in our best interest. Try to embrace the positive and forget the rest. We're very lucky in the West, trust me, compared to a lot of the world we are blessed. Because one person's trash is another person's treasure. One person's work is another person's leisure. One person's pain is another person's pleasure. Therefore, happiness is something only one person can measure. And obviously, that person is you. But loving ourselves is something that we need to do. Go and find a life path that's true to your personal view. And life might get hard, but we've got to keep journeying through. Optimism is a self-amplifying feedback loop. I like that bit, I'm going to say that again. Sorry. Optimism is a self-amplifying feedback loop. Pessimism is a mental prison, and both can affect the mood of the whole group. So, abracadabra. I mean, I speak as I create optimism. Optimism. I believe that might be the single most important human trait. It's never too late to appreciate every thought, word, and moment is what you make it. So make sure that it's great. Try to project yourself as at best to express that you expect to manifest this optimism as your natural state. It's never too late to become the person you were meant to be. It will happen, inevitably, as we all manifest our destiny. But be the real you, instead of this person sometimes some of us pretend to be. See, that's what gets me. Like, technically, we're our own best friend and worst enemy. But whatever we were meant to be, eventually, we will get to be. You put your mind to it, mentally, and visualise what you request to be, and you'll find it's already there inside of you, essentially. We all have a cause, now go find yours and become the person you were sent to be.
Alright, so you can take a seat, and then we'll chat about this one, and then we can jump on the next ones after. So you see, there's a couple more pieces after that.
I mean, I could go on forever.
Hey, always. So, do you know if this mic works?
Yeah.
Okay, sweet. I'm gonna get this ready for that. So a couple of things that I wanted to pick up from the first piece.
Yeah, that's what I thought it'd be better to do this one. But
Yeah, cool. So the first thing that you said, the first thing that stood out to me was you said we're standing on the shoulders of giants, and then you mentioned a couple of like key people from history, such as Nikola Tesla, and that's something that I think is important for us to realize, because people are very fond of saying things like, "Oh, like this is the first time in history that this has happened," and I'm always saying no. Like, look at history. There's patterns. A lot of these things have happened before, just in different ways. Especially when people critique this generation for being like, "Oh, you guys have like really short attention spans. Like, you've just got this social media. You've grown up with social media, so you're just so different." And I'm thinking, no. Technology is always developing. All this is the modern manifestation of what has been happening continually across history. So yeah, what do you think about that?
I'm not really sure what to say to that. I mean, it reminds me of I can't remember what it's called, but basically over a certain amount of time, our information like doubles, and it's that time that our information is doubling is halving as it goes along. Like, so it's I remember.
That's what I was going to say. There's been a mad sort of acceleration of history.
Yeah, I remember my friend's granddad said this to me. Well, I'll never forget it. It was quite interesting when I was really young. And he said to me, he goes, "When you're in your lifetime, he goes, something life-changing will happen in your life." And I was like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Well, the amount of stuff." He goes, "When I was a kid, we used to bang a hoop down the road with a stick." He goes, "The changes I've seen in my lifetime," he goes, "everything's moving so fast that whether it's an alien invasion, it could be the technology." He goes, "I don't know, but everything's moving so fast that something big has to happen in your lifetime." And that's always stuck with me. I've said that a million times.
Go for it. You want to say something?
He's just struck on exactly what I was going to say about a feeling of a unique acceleration of history. So 400 years of the same philosophy. It's about 350 years actually, and the last 150 years, and like he says, it's doubling. So, for example, I think we saw the 60s and the 70s again after 9/11. You get a big peace movement like the Vietnam movement. The gigs turn out to be more important than the demos. You get big hippie movement, conscious gigs, and then that sort of goes wrong and turns into punk, and that all happened. The whole 60s and 70s sort of happened again. But computers, like you say, doubling. That was it. There was more. You said a series of names.
Buckminster Fuller, Nikola Tesla, and Rudolf Steiner.
Yeah.
Tell us about those people.
They're all from that 400 years, 300.
I mean, Nikola Tesla, if anyone's not familiar with him, he was like quite ahead of his time as well. He invented free energy, but they basically what happened was it was around the time it was him and Thomas Edison, the guy who invented electricity, and he invented DC, direct current, and Tesla had done AC. And basically he says he built a tower, what was it called? Wardenclyffe Tower, right? And he was getting funded. He could stand there with a light bulb in his hand like miles away, and this thing would light this thing in his hand, right? But the people who were funding him at the time, JP Morgan, if I'm not mistaken, he basically said, "Look, I can't put a meter on it, so you're not selling it." And then they burnt his shit to the ground and fucked up his life. And since that day, we haven't needed to pay a penny for fossil fuels or anything, but that's been withheld from us. And he was like well ahead of his time. It was really interesting stuff, Nikola Tesla. There's a lot of things that are credited to other people now that have really got his name attached to it, like hundreds of patents, things like Marconi, they say, invented the radio, but he didn't. He kind of used things that were from Tesla, and his patents and stuff are like form the bedrock of quite a lot of stuff we use today that he doesn't get credit for. It's quite sad.
See, this is one of the reasons why I say that I'm not buying this whole like unique generation thing, because when there's people like that lived like over 100 years ago, people were doing stuff, like it's almost a little bit self-indulgent for us to say like, we are so unique and we're so advanced from everybody else. Like, I don't know, I'm not too.
Well, every
convinced,
age
yeah.
we've been through always think that they're at the forefront of what
That's
there
it.
is, and then like
Yeah.
100 years later they're looking back and them like they're idiots. You know what I mean?
Genuinely,
It's like-
yeah.
You can go back any amount of time, how far you tell the story. If you're in the British, probably we're going to focus on this last 350 years pretty much. But British history is 1066 really, and then 2,000 years. But what you're saying is a lot of what's happening is really not unique, and humans are not really that much different from when we were in caves, and we've had high civilizations and low civilizations before. But the doubling thing he's talking about, just a peculiar character of history, like it's accelerating at the moment, not to even say anything against what you're saying, but just what he's saying about the doubling.
You still think it is got that acceleration?
History
Yes,
feels,
there is a
yeah,
word for it.
like
Something
everything's
to-
happened before, but it's all happening again faster.
So that's like,
The
that's
cycle.
a half-life. The half-life is sort of, the way that a half-life goes is like sort of doubling amount would happen in the same amount of time. So, yeah. Okay. What did you guys have, anything you want to add to that? Go for it, pass the mic.
Yeah, two things. Microphone. Okay. Well, first of all, actually, I think it's interesting that we always talk about the origin of thoughts, and we put so much emphasis on who was the founder of those thoughts, because it very much reiterates that kind of philosophy of like, it matters whose property this thought is, it matters who first came up with this thought. Instead of like promoting a more like shared sort of knowledge approach, it's always this obsession with like, who was the first person to think of this? Who was the first person to think of that? When in reality, it's usually just like a matter of a split second. If there's 3 people in the room, it's likely that they're all going to come up with the same idea. It just happens to be that somebody might get like a spark of a thought before someone else. And I generally just I don't really care. I don't think that the originating thoughts has so much importance, because I just think it goes back to the concept of property, and like that thoughts need to belong to somebody, and unless they do, they're not important, and unless you can make it productive, they're not worth anything. And I think that, yeah, so I think that's my first thought is like, I just genuinely believe a lot more in like open sourcing and just collectively coming up with ideas, rather than being so obsessed with like owning thoughts and owning ideas, because I think in the end that's what really fucks us up. And then I think, secondly, with the acceleration of time, I think when we look at the way that the economy is evolving, it's like capitalism has a huge part in that, but I think we are looking at the way it's advancing, but we're not really looking at the downfall of that. And so a lot of lives are lost at the cost of this advancement and at this cost of the speed enhancement. And sometimes I think it also like begs the question if we really need that amount of speed enhancement if it causes so much suffering, and if the profit maximization and time maximization is really worth all that sort of suffering. So those are just some thoughts that I had.
Just to jump back to you on the fact that the acceleration has like there's a loss that comes out of it. Yeah, like tell me, give me an example of that.
I mean, if you even, because we were talking about this earlier, I just thought of it. If you even look back into like when, if you look back at like the way different countries develop, you just see how for example, when countries reach the industrial stage, there's much more of a focus on profit maximization, which then make countries more likely to want to have hierarchies in their economies, and then they're much more likely to exploit people for the purpose of that profit maximization. And rather than, when, the way that humanity kind of started, when we had a collectivization of goods, and it wasn't so much about the maximization of those goods, but the sort of equal use. And so I think when we just think about it in a one-dimensional sense of like, how can we advance fast, right away, maximize, we kind of think, we forget about the aspect that, there's a reason why we didn't do it this way in the beginning, and hierarchies within the economy have contributed towards this speed, but it's always interesting to ask if technological advances and all that stuff, if that is as important as having sort of a communal way and a collective way of living. So, you guys.
Cool, man.
I could give you another example of that. What she asked for the detrimental effects is
Just quick one-liners. There's countries that just didn't have money at all until recently.
so they were existing and now all of a sudden
You've got to make money
In order
to live, but they were living fine up until that point, and now all of a sudden they're poor.
Yeah.
But they weren't poor before.
And I guess that's a fruit of globalization, because in order for all the markets to be able to interact with each other, for all the markets to interact with each other, you need like a common currency. You need a common sort of tool that's going to help all of you to speak the same language. And some people have got a head start over other people. Cool. So that was the first point I wanted to raise with you. The next point that I wanted to speak about is somewhat related to this, but it's about, and this is something that comes up in a lot of your poetry, but it's about the interrelation between multiple different factors. And speaking about like the CIA, speaking about the British government, speaking about all of climate change, all of these different things coming together. Do you think that that's just like and I always try to make this distinction between correlation and causation. Do you think it's just that so many things are happening at the same time that they're just correlating, or is there like a direct link that one is causing the other, one is causing the other?
I wouldn't say a link necessarily. I would say there is an ingrained behaviour mindset into those that do have a lot more influence. Like as you know, there's a massive the gap between the rich and the poor. I mean, it's these people, because they want to keep on to their money. Obviously, these people have all the power. They want to do whatever they can to keep it. Obviously, so what they do is they teach their kids. They raise their kids in ways that will make them grow up to be cold and psychopaths as well. That's why a lot of them have nannies and stuff, so they don't get love, and then they turn into psychopaths. That's why there's a lot of abuse going on with the elites as well, like child abuse and stuff. It's really messed up. But yeah, these people are it depends how deep you want to take it, really. But I mean, I could go off on some really weird ones, but I'm not going to.
So you think that because of the way that elites have been raised, that affects society as a whole?
Yeah, I mean, because these people don't know what it's like to live in the real world. They live in their own little bubble. I mean, however you'd want to term it, these people, that's why that was one part of my awakening that was hard, getting over to learn to love these people as well. Because I mean, as much as they might be doing wrong or whatever, they're just as us. They're just doing what they've been brought up and raised to think they have to do, and they're victims in this as well. Yeah. Then also I realised it's we get a chance to make the world a better place on the back of righting their wrongs. So I'm grateful to them for giving me this journey. That's how I got learned to hate the people, love the people you hate.
Yeah, no, fair. Yeah, do you have
you want to say something just pro-elite, just to balance it out? What was I going to say? I shouldn't have started like that. Everyone lives in their own little bubble to a certain extent. Yeah. You all get your surroundings and that's it. Politician job looks like a dirty job, I wouldn't mind it. But I think I could do a better job than that.
But angels are starting their own party, or something.
The scenarios are just messy, that's all I'm saying. You see them, fucking hell. Anyway, I shouldn't have spoken.
bubbles. We all sort of, to a certain extent, live in bubbles, you know what I mean?
Well, yeah, we all live
You've got your surroundings, you've got what you've got to deal with. If you're a politician, you just got to deal with that. That's what's in front of you.
Reaction.
Well, happens, but it's quite random, a lot of it, I think.
And now jumping into your second piece, you started off speaking about depression, and then you spoke about sort of inequalities and then issues within the UK specifically. And this touches on the last topic that we were speaking about, and it's this whole idea of justice for rich people. And so let me ruffle some feathers here, but when we speak about a lot of the issues that we face in this society, you spoke about how we're blessed in this country when you compare us to so many people in the rest of the world. We complain a lot about a lot that we go through here. Do we make too much noise, and should we actually put ourselves in the context of the whole world and see that some of the things that we complain about, we should just stop complaining about.
First world problems.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of part to do with conditioning as well. The way we're conditioned to be, all of us, no matter who you are, you think that you're not conditioned. You fucking are. Right, now we're conditioned to, where was I going with that? Hold on a minute. What was I talking about? I forgot what I was going with that completely.
Justice for us in this country, like, are we fighting for
Oh yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, no, we're conditioned to be this way. I mean, we're always going to be I believe we're conditioned to be miserable, you know, and in fear, because it then keeps you in need of the government, in need of the fucking husband. Stress and illness are killer, mate. You know that. It's like if you used to, I know it's just completely off topic, but if you used to give two people a bar of chocolate, and one of them's going to really, really enjoy it, and the other one's going to beat themselves up for doing it, it's going to have a lot worse physiological effect on that person there than it is there. So I mean, I personally think it's just to keep us all. I mean, because they don't want everyone being happy and healthy and productive and getting smarter, because then they'll start realising, fuck, hold on a minute, this system ain't right. So it's in their best interest to keep everybody miserable, however you'd want to put it. But yeah, I mean, we're conditioned to get this way, you know, it's this old
Conditioned again.
eat, sleep, work, repeat. But also, I've got a theory though, I think monogamy comes into this as well, right? Because it wasn't until I went and got into like a polyamorous relationship that I realised this whole template of like, you can only love one person, mortgage, car, 2.5 kids. That's messing with the feedback loops, right? I'm going to get into chaos theory again here. That's a few times I've done this now. Yeah, right, with chaos theory, right? It's basically like a theory that there is a natural mathematical pattern that goes through nature, things like fractals and stuff. But you'll have systems like with millions of components, things like weather systems, fucking rainforests, the universe, the earth and all that. And they're all kind of self-harmoniously organises, right? It looks after itself. But humans have kind of gone against that rule by thinking that we can like hierarchically control nature. Like, you know, you go in the forest, you don't see one tree going, oh, these trees need to go there. Like, you know, we're messing with the feedback loops of nature. So, for example, like farmers don't need to get how much milk they need anymore. We're told them how much to do. So there's always a waste, or there's like, you know, we're kind of trying to override nature. And what was I going with that chaos theory?
Totally agree with you about this systemization problem, but just in answer to conditioning with regards to the question you're asking, like, should we be complaining? Well, stand up for your rights, stand up for other people's rights, but with regards to complaining, protesting politically, angry at someone who's them, the conditioning is initially Protestant. That's when we started doing that. That's why protest is a virtue that comes from Protestant. Okay. And if you're Protestant, it's why you say, I'm humbled to receive this award, because it's a Protestant virtue as well. That's in those theses too. So, protest. So, you know, everyone's out there protesting when they maybe should be rallying or getting together, you know.
Okay. What do you guys think in terms of like justice for rich people? I want to hear what you have to say.
I actually, one thing, can I say so? I got told this by a woman who's from a wealthy family, right? So I was going on about the elite paedophile cases and stuff, right? And but there's a few places now. Apparently, it's a lot better to get abused if you're poor. Because if you're poor, the police might actually do something about it. The rich kids go good to the police, they won't do shit. They will get covered up, swept under the carpet. It's money, innit? But I got told, yeah, we're lucky to be poor, because if we get fucked over, the police might do something. Don't know what to make of that.
Yeah, just kind of thinking about what you said, Kwame. I think obviously there's like a lot of value in being aware of your privilege and your position compared to other people, and to kind of not just be aware of it, but to kind of actively involve yourself in kind of, I don't know, dealing with the issues that come out of that privilege. But with this whole thing about the privileged Western world versus the underprivileged, so-called underdeveloped or developing world, kind of when we're talking in those giant macro terms, it's so easy to kind of fall into really problematic traps, which kind of reproduce very like Orientalist or kind of messed up ways about thinking about people of color who are away from us outside the Western world, and kind of this kind of general
what do you
rhetoric.
mean by Orientalist, sorry?
Yeah, this kind of general rhetoric of like, I don't know, like finish your food because think about those poor starving children in Africa or India, and you know, that kind of narrative is obviously really dangerous, because it creates these ideas about people who are very different from us, and hence when we've already put them in this kind of category of other, it then leads obviously to all these other really dangerous ideas of their life kind of almost being less worthy, because in your eyes they've already kind of lost in a way. And so compared to kind of white lives, which you've already kind of established as being successful or having the potential to be successful, so them failing in some way is somehow more painful for people to see, compared to brown lives who are failing, because you're like, they're already kind of lost. So I think it's really important to, when we're talking about privilege, especially in these kind of east-west or north-south kind of ways, to kind of get what that means, or kind of be aware of other ways you can kind of talk about it. Also to be kind of aware of the inequalities in your own neighborhood, for example, that people overlook. Yeah, man.
That's a good point, and I think it's 100% when we're speaking about like the sort of us and them divide of we're super privileged, they're underprivileged. For me, just from like a sort of business and economics perspective, it does perpetuate poverty, because essentially you're saying that this is how we define those people. And so when it comes to economic integration, when it comes to genuine like monetary relationships that would allow people to thrive as societies in the sort of global structure, it puts them down. And immediately people are then thinking, we can't really trade with these people like equals, because they're just poor and they've got nothing to offer us. Whereas if the narrative is more so looking at the value that all societies can bring, then you're going to see the value in trading with these other people and having relationships with them, because you can say, oh, like, we can add value to you and you can add value to us. And so bringing that back to the whole justice for rich people thing, I think that potentially a way that that can be flipped is not for it to just be an us and them thing, but for it to just be a whole conclusive us. So for us to see all of us within the same context, and then within that saying, okay, there's things that aren't right in this context, and in the distance that we can see between ourselves within a certain country are going to look a lot smaller if we've got a global perspective. Do you get that? Yeah? But let me know, tell me, come back.
I'm not sure, I'm not sure I completely get what you mean about creating an us. Like, I think it's important to make a distinction between the actual effect of othering and having differences. So I think the process of othering is really dangerous, because it comes with all these other kind of what I was thinking about, so I'm not gonna repeat myself. But I think it's also, when we're talking about, I guess, issues of solidarity and getting different people of different places together, I think it's really important in a way to also be aware of the differences and the implications of the differences. So just in kind of any social movement, I think there have been these tendencies to kind of group people together, or the ideas of solidarity, that we just all need to kind of be together for this one cause, and very often that doesn't work, because just, for example, in the feminist movement, obviously if you're a white feminist or a feminist of colour, like, you're not coming from the same place. So even if you're like, let's all fight this together, if you're not aware of how...
Isn't that othering what you just did there?
No, I think there's a distinction between being aware of how your background affects your place in the world, and the process of using that background to distance yourself from someone, or to make them less worthy in your eyes. That is what othering means.
So just to jump in as well, I think that's sort of saying that's like reinforcing the point that I was making about knowing your perspective in the world. And so it's about putting yourself in the wider context, which is where that more collective us comes from, because it's not just us within Britain or us within the global north, but it's us in the world. And once you can do that, then it shows you, okay, snap, like there's people a lot further down the economic ladder that we need to concentrate on more so than just myself, who is like 3/4 of the way up as opposed to all the way at the top. Is that clearer?
Can I say something?
Go for it, please. Yeah.
So it brings to mind integration and assimilation. They're two different things. Integration preserves boundaries. Assimilation destroys boundaries. So what we're looking at here is caricature, or sort of othering is caricature fundamentally. It's taking one small trait, and then expanding it and saying they're all like that.
Yeah, stereotyping,
Yeah,
prejudice.
it's a caricature. So a caricature is about assimilation. It's saying you must be like me or like us. Whereas integration is going, oh, you're different. We do it this way here, you do it that way here. That's cool, that's really interesting. And so what you see, I've got friends working with sort of forest peoples in Peru and Brazil. And what they're faced with all the time is that NGOs come in and they don't understand that what they're doing is they're trying to assimilate the forest people into the larger culture. And the forest people are saying, no, we want our boundaries preserved because we're prepared to let you be different, be who you are, but don't come into our land. And so they say, we never experienced poverty until you turn the forest into an income stream.
Yeah.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So poverty is a function of assimilation rather than integration. Integration would bring more equality, more seeing that we are a collective of differences, because there's a tendency for people to say unite, and we're all united together under the one fucking flag, and that's just stupid, because that again is assimilation.
Yeah.
So assimilation's like the Borg in Star Wars. Is it okay if I make a cup of tea?
Yeah. Indoctrination is assimilation. Religion is assimilation. But you have had times where in Arabic cultures and in Christian cultures where, and even in Iraq before Saddam and all the rest of it, where you had people from all the different religions living side by side, intermarrying, being distinct, but still being one group of people. And like the lies that were told after the invasion of Iraq about how the Arabs had been fighting with each other for years, it's like bullshit. Most of the people at the grassroots live side by side, they intermarry, they know each other, and it isn't until external forces come in and shift power, balance of power, and then tell different stories, othering different groups.